So why don't we get started? Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Brad Smith. I'm the president at Microsoft, and on behalf of Amy Hood, our CFO, the two of us are just delighted to have the opportunity to welcome you, to join so many of you who have been working on the issue that we're here to talk about this morning, and to really think about what we all have the opportunity to do together. The history of Microsoft in this region is well known. Not only is it well known, some of you in the room have played defining parts in creating it. But this year is a bit of a milestone because it was 4 decades ago that Microsoft moved to Bellevue. It was really Burgermaster that brought us. And it was a different region. It was a different time. The city of Seattle was a different city. The East Side was very different. And we've all seen this enormous growth, and we've all, in so many ways, benefited from it. As a company, we at Microsoft have been very focused for about 15 years on the health of the region, and we've always pursued this by focusing on 2 issues above all else. The first is education, and the second is transportation. Every year we've sat down and we've asked, what more can we do in this region to advance these 2 issues for the benefit of everybody and to really build a healthy community? Well, part of what we decided last summer was that the time had come to expand our focus. And instead of focusing on 2 issues, to focus on 3. Certainly, I think all of us in this room are acutely aware of what we've been seeing changing in this region over the last decade, and especially over the last 5 years. And a focus that required us to think about education and transportation and still think about those issues really requires us to think about the affordability of housing as well. In some ways, this is a complicated issue. It is absolutely a multifaceted issue, but in many ways, it's a simple issue. Jobs came to our region, but the region did not build houses or any housing units for all the people who would fill them. But one of the things we concluded last summer is that we did indeed need to understand the problem better if we were going to do something constructive to help address it. So we put a crack data science team from Microsoft on the problem. We partnered with Zillow, and that was just absolutely terrific because they enabled us to access data that the public previously didn't have. In the last couple of months, we've worked with the Boston Consulting Group, or BCG. We've studied with Challenge Seattle best practices around the country, and there are some important best practices. We've studied best practices around the world, places like Sydney, Australia. But I think it still helps first and foremost to understand what is happening here in our midst, because the numbers really are compelling. When you put it all together, and we're sharing all of this on the web, what you start to see is that, first of all, jobs have really grown in Puget Sound, especially since 2014. But since the year 2011, jobs in our region have grown by over 20%. Housing units have not kept pace. This graph shows you the comparison of job growth and housing unit growth for the region as a whole, which for this purpose is the city of Seattle and 9 other large cities around Seattle. But one of the things that we learned, something that the Seattle Times has done a terrific job of documenting over the last year, is this. There is a gap in the city of Seattle itself. It's about a 4-point gap. But once you leave the city of Seattle and you go to the other cities around Seattle, the gap is even wider. In fact, it's especially wide in the cities across the lake, across Lake Washington. One of the things that we've learned is that if you studied economics in college or high school, it was probably some time well spent. Because what happens when demand exceeds supply is that prices rise. And indeed, that is exactly what has happened here in Puget Sound. You see how the price of homes has outpaced the income that people have earned. And what's especially important is to look at the price of a median housing unit and compare that to median household income. That is what this graph does. But what really helped us understand this problem better was to drill into data more deeply on a city-by-city basis and an occupation-by-occupation basis. And we've made all of this data available through Microsoft's Power BI on the web, and John Cahan, who leads the data science team, will be here afterwards so that any of you who are interested can look on one of these devices and drill into these data points for yourself. But some of what we found really helpful to look at, you'll see here. The first was to see what was happening in the region in terms of who is occupying the housing units in our region. This shows the region as a whole. And what it shows is that high-income households, households that are 120% or more of the median household income, have been growing. More and more of our homes are being occupied by people who have that ability to afford to live in them. What you also see is that the homes that are held by middle income have been flat. Homes held by people with a low income have in fact been falling. And what you see at the bottom is then how the housing units are distributed among each of these three income groups and how it has changed from 2011 to 2017. What you saw in 2011 was a region where there were more housing units occupied by low-income people than any other group. What you see in 2017 is that high-income households have now become the largest share. But what you see in the region as a whole is especially pronounced when you drill into this on a city-by-city basis. This shows us what has changed in the city of Redmond. Over the last 7 years, we've seen steady growth in housing units that are occupied by high-income households. And we've seen a decline for both mid-income and low-income households. And so what you saw in 2011 has changed quite a bit by 2017. In 2011, already in Redmond, the high-income households were the largest share. But if you put low-income and mid-income together, they still were a larger share collectively than high-income households. By 2017, that had changed. And what that fundamentally means is that many of the people who play vital roles in our communities can no longer afford to live in them. In many ways, that is the problem, short and simple. And what we therefore did is analyze as well what that means in terms of the gap we have to fill in order to get ourselves out of the problem the region now faces. The truth is, based on our study, the gap is even bigger than what we previously understood. It's not wildly different from other studies that have been done, but when we look at the region as a whole, we basically face an affordable housing gap of around 300,000 units. And until we fill that gap, what we're going to see is an ongoing impact on people that we all care about. The people we work with, the people we rely upon. You see this in the data. For example, you see this for a group like registered nurses. This lower bar shows the median annual income of registered nurses in this region. This other curve shows the annual income required to afford a median income housing unit. And what you see is that in 2014, a median income housing unit started to become unaffordable for registered nurses. And what you see in 2017 is that those housing units are well beyond the reach of people that we all may depend on, literally, for life and death. That's the region as a whole. What you can see if you go to our data is you can go into different occupations and then you can look at different cities. And what is interesting is in some ways not surprising, but in other ways even more sobering than we might have imagined. Because of course when you go to the cities where you expect prices to be highest, you see middle income homes exceed the reach of middle income people. You see, however, that these housing units were still affordable as people moved to places like Auburn or Kent or Federal Way. But take a look at this, because this shows the situation for an elementary school teacher in Kent. Until 2016, an elementary school teacher earned more than was required to live in a median housing unit in Kent. But in 2017, that changed. And you see a trend here, and you see this trend for every occupation, and increasingly you see it in every single city. And what we now face is a situation where people had responded by saying, moving to the Kents and Auburns and Federal Ways, is that these places are rapidly becoming unaffordable as well. The reality is that we're requiring more and more people who are so important to our communities to now contemplate living even farther away. Now, of course, one of the things one finds is that whenever you study numbers, it helps to turn them into pictures, but you never want to forget that all the numbers are people. All the people are individuals. Every individual has a real life and a real challenge that they're facing every morning. So one of the other things we wanted to do as part of this exercise was to ensure that the people who are being affected by this have voices that are heard. Because that's fundamental, we believe, to our ability to really understand what's going on. So let me take just a few minutes so you can watch and hear directly from the people who are being impacted by this.
Well, I live in Enumclaw, Washington, and I work around the east side in all overlay clinics. I spend about 3 hours in the car. I think traffic just makes it worse. It feels like I'm in the car all day. I don't really see my family that much. What made me come out to the east side to work is the opportunities. We would love to move here, but it just can't happen, at least not now.
It's my 13th year as a teacher, and I absolutely love it. That's my purpose. A year and a half ago, I moved out to the east side. It's quite a bit more than what I was paying, but it's that sacrifice that I feel like, well, either I'm commuting for an hour and a half-ish each day, or I have a 20-minute drive.
I love my job. Every day is something different. After I got hired here, we looked into buying a home, and after looking in the east side, it was incredibly expensive. So I live in Lake Stevens. The commute is terrible, 40 minutes, 2 hours. It can take a lot out of you.
Affordable housing is impacting our recruitment, and it's impacting our retention. And the number one issue that I'm hearing is affordable housing. They can't live here. So we hired a person, the type of employee that any city wants to hire, and he was living south of Bellevue. And his intention was try to move up here, but he couldn't because he couldn't find affordable housing. He had to make a choice for his family, and he chose to be a police officer in the community in which he lives. And when we lose people like that, it impacts public safety.
I would like to eventually find a home closer to work. It would change my life because there's going to be more time.
I mean, it would be wonderful if I didn't spend as much on rent. I could expand in my career. There shouldn't have to be so many sacrifices to live closer to work.
If you had a neighborly or more community-related relationship with like the teacher of your children or your postman or your local police officer that patrols your district, it sort of helps strengthen the bonds and moves your community forward. And when people just show up, work in your city, and then go back home to their own city, you sort of lose that layer.
We think that really captures the problem well. And one of the things we've recognized is that it has taken years for this problem to grow across this region. It will take years for us to solve it. But everybody has a part to play, and we all need to play our part. That's what led Amy and me and Satya Nadella and our entire senior leadership team to conclude that at Microsoft, our part to play needs to bring capital to help solve this problem. And that's why we're delighted to put $500 million towards new solutions to help solve this problem. As large as a sum of money this is, it will not solve this problem by itself. That's why it's so important that we try to use this moment and this funding to really be a catalyst for change. We'll talk a little bit about that. But before that, Amy's going to take you through how our money will be put to work. Amy?
Thanks, Brad. It's such an honor to be in the room today with so many people who've committed their life's work to help address these issues. And so the small role that we're looking forward to playing in solving this problem as a catalyst for change begins with a couple components. The first one, of course, is a focus on one of the issues you saw depicted in the video, which is to help in middle-income housing. This tends to be a spot where there are not as many incentives that exist across communities and governments to have this funding exist. We feel like there's a unique role to play. And for example, this could be used as short-term financing as groups work to establish longer-term construction financing. It could be an example as they work through with the public sector on the acquisition of land. It could also be a more permanent vehicle. A portion of these investments will be done through the King County Housing Authority, which we're excited to partner with, as well as, and I think initially, it'll be more focused on the east side, given some of the issues you've seen, but ultimately across the entire region. The second component is $250 million at market rates that'll be invested across the Puget Sound region. We feel strongly that this injection of capital can help improve and accelerate and focus on the construction of new housing units at a quicker pace. And finally, $25 million in philanthropic grants with the focus on homelessness. And we're incredibly excited today to announce the first two of those grants. The first will be $5 million along with and to establish with the home-based program being led by the United Way of King County. We're really proud to have John Stanton on our board, but in his role with the Seattle Mariners, he worked along with the King County Bar Association and John Fine and the great team at the United Way of King County to establish this program. It really focuses on the prevention of homelessness in that cycle, and we're excited to see what this $5 million can do to accelerate their progress. And secondly, the second $5 million grant is because of our wholehearted support of the effort that many in this room have made to combine the efforts of the city and the county to work together to solve the issues of homelessness in our region. So we're committing that $5 million to a new philanthropic funders collaborative, and we look forward to the progress that this too can make.
The truth is, we wouldn't have been comfortable or confident making this investment if we didn't have the confidence in the region's leaders as we do. And we wouldn't have been confident if we didn't see this fitting into a broader strategy, a strategy that requires not only new capital, but public policy change and really an opportunity to bring the entire community together. As we think about that, one of the most important elements, perhaps the single most important element, is support at the municipal level by the various cities. You're going to hear more about this in a moment because Christine Gregoire, our former governor, in her role as the CEO of Challenge Seattle, spent a lot of time talking and working with the mayors of 9 cities. And to have a collective commitment to explore and pursue the kinds of policy changes that will be needed is the kind of thing that can make all the difference in the world. You'll hear more about that. But we also think that there's a vital role from the county, as you've already heard, and from the state. I think we're incredibly fortunate that there are people in Olympia who have been working on this problem for a long time. One of those individuals is here with us this morning, the Speaker of the House, Frank Chopp. I learned in 2011 when I was chairing the Higher Education Task Force for then Governor Christine Gregoire that Frank was not only a source of great advice, but he could make all the difference in Olympia in getting something done. And that's what we're going to need here, because there are so many clear opportunities for the state to do more. In part, it's contributing capital, doubling roughly the size of the state's housing trust fund. That one we should probably wait and hold the applause till they vote, but it's a great goal for everybody to pursue. But there are a number of other issues that I know many of you in this room, frankly, understand much better than certainly somebody like I does. There's a lot of blocking and tackling. There are issues around condominium liability reform that need to be addressed. There are issues around the multi-family tax exemption and the ability to extend it. There are land use policies that are holding the region back. All of these will need to be addressed. Ultimately, what we've concluded is that everyone has a role to play. People may be able to volunteer their time. There are people that have data. Every employer has data about the jobs they're creating and where their employees are living. There is land, often public land, that can be donated or leased at below market prices. And then there is capital. There is capital that is held by businesses. There is capital that the local philanthropies have as well. It will take all of this and all of us to solve this crisis. But that is what we believe we need to do. Certainly for me and for us, one of the individuals that we've learned the most from on this issue is somebody we frankly tend to learn a lot about on just about every issue. So let me introduce the person who probably needs no introduction here, the CEO of Challenge Seattle, Christine Gregoire.
Well, good morning, everybody. With the obvious undeniable success that we've experienced in the region have come undeniable challenges, and the fact of the matter is, chief among them is housing affordability. Over the past decade, you could probably see from what Brad and Amy shared with you, King County has added jobs at twice the national average, and our population has surged, more than double the rate of growth of the United States. And with that, the median home price has risen nearly 60% and rent over 40%, both 3 times faster than any other rate in the United States, and both significantly faster than the growth in median household income. Today, the challenge we see is a typical middle-income family cannot afford to live in almost any place in King County. So, Challenge Seattle members obviously want the entire region to be economically successful and to continue that success. But they fundamentally also want the region to be affordable to all families of all incomes. We applaud the work and attention that is being given to homelessness and low-income housing, because that is a key and important issue for all of us to step up to. Challenge Seattle is also concerned about the far too many middle-income families who are forced to make a choice between either living so far away that they're commuting hours to get to work, or by being financially burdened by having too much of a percentage of their household income that goes simply to housing. When our nurses, our teachers, our electricians, our first responders can't afford to live where they work, we all lose, and we lose significantly. We have a housing affordability crisis in the region that includes those middle-income families and many more. We need more middle-income housing, but we also need it in the right location and at the right price. Challenge Seattle has been working with the Boston Consulting Group to research the problem, not just here, but around the nation and around the globe. In the coming weeks, we're prepared to share with you our findings. But I want to tell you a very clear finding that we have found. We are not alone by any means in this challenge. But we also have seen that unfortunately, no one has been able to claim victory. But we have learned there are 2 essential components to open the doors for success. They are the private sector and the public sector. The private sector can bring capital investment like what we're seeing here today. And the public sector can break down barriers in policy, and they can provide incentives so that we can build more and preserve more middle-income housing. There is no chance, absolutely no chance of success if either is missing. Today, we thank Microsoft for stepping up and stepping out to provide unprecedented nationally, if not globally, an essential capital for affordable housing generally and specifically with regard to middle-income housing as a much-needed first step. And today, with Executive Constantine and Mayor Durkin, we have 9 of our larger cities outside Seattle who have committed to affordable housing, including middle-income housing, and they are willing to address the policies necessary to make it possible. They have issued their own statement, and we are asking others to join with them and their leadership. 5 of them are able to join us today. I'd like to introduce them to you. Mayor Nancy Backus of Auburn. Mayor Chelmanek of Bellevue. Mayor Ralph of Kent. Mayor Sweet of Kirkland. Mayor Marchione of Redmond. Thank you all for your willingness to be here today, to make the outstanding statement that you have made, to partner with Challenge Seattle, and to partner with Microsoft. With the leadership of Brad and Amy and Satya and the entire leadership team at Microsoft, and the leadership today from the public sectors, we are taking a dramatic, and by the way, unprecedented and unique step to ensure that our communities are healthy and vibrant. In the end, however, as Brad said, they alone can't make it possible. It will take every single person living in the region to make it real for all of us. It is time again for us, as we have in the past, to come together as a community, take our collective determination and join with these leaders here today and ensure that our region preserves its high quality of life and maintains housing affordability for generations to come. Thank you, and now it's my pleasure to introduce another public leader in housing affordability, King County Executive Dow Constantine.
Thank you, Governor. Well, thank you, Governor, and good morning. Thank you, Brad and Microsoft, for this remarkable day. There are some days that feel like history, days we know we'll remember when we look back at our time in public service, and I think today is clearly one of those days. Microsoft is such a quintessential part of who we are as a community, a quintessential Northwest company. It's woven in to our fabric. And today's announcement underscores what we already know. This is a reciprocal relationship. As a region, we've experienced so much prosperity. It's been discussed already today, and it's a good thing. People are doing better than they did before, but that prosperity also has some unintended consequences. It has not changed our values, and one of our deepest values is the sense that we are all in this together and we can't leave folks behind as this region continues to prosper. The people who created and shaped this place over generations, who built this region, they deserve to be able to live here in security, contributing to this community, enjoying the fruits of their labors. I think about folks like my parents. They're retired public school teachers. And they're fortunate to have bought a house years ago when I was a kid, but a lot of their peers are struggling to be able to live in a region that's changed so rapidly. We need to make sure that they're able to live here and to be secure and to participate in the community that they help shape. Or our own employees at King County. We spoke with a young woman who got a good job with the county, but she's struggling to try to buy that first house while paying off a mountain of student debt that accumulated. Or another woman who works for us who has a child with a severe disability. She's seen her rent go up $1,000 over the course of the last 5 years, and she's seriously contemplating having to leave the world of public service that she loves in order to be able to make more money, to keep a roof over her family's head. We all know this. The lack of affordable housing is the single biggest root cause of homelessness in our communities. It's the reason that many in our community are living paycheck to paycheck. It's pushing our most vulnerable to the margins, especially those who are living on limited or fixed incomes. But this moment is a monumental turning of the tide for our region. Investments of this magnitude do not come along every day, do they, Governor? And we have an opportunity not just to change individual lives, but to change entire communities. More housing, yes. More housing near jobs. More housing near transit so people don't have to spend so much of their lives simply trying to get to the place where they make their living. Housing that is affordable to the people who earn their living here in King County. And with a private sector partner stepping up in such a dramatic way, it is incumbent on us in the public sector to do our part as well. We will bring our resources, whether it is property that could be made available, or streamlined permitting, or smarter zoning or incentives to generate development. And I will join with these great regional leaders whom you just met, and with others from around the region to make that a reality. I also want to thank Microsoft for the announcement that you just heard of the $5 million grant to support the recent announcement that Mayor Durkin and I made, along with our partners in business and in philanthropy. I think I saw Connie Ballmer and Tricia Rakes, philanthropic leaders with deep Microsoft roots, and other King County regional leaders to stand up a new entity, a collective entity, so that together we can address the root causes of homelessness in an evidence-based, racially just, community-driven way. I've said it many times. Government acting alone cannot solve our housing and affordability challenges. Today we begin a new era with an old friend. An unprecedented commitment by this company and by all of us together to build a stronger, more equitable community with Microsoft, of course. And now I would, you've met many of the mayors of some of our largest cities. I would like to introduce to you the mayor of the largest of King County's 39 cities, Mayor Jenny Durkin of Seattle.
Thank you, Dow. Thank you so much, Brad and Amy, and thank you, Satya, who's not here. We know that history is not written by the challenges we face. History is written by how we respond to those challenges and by the vision of the leaders who stand up to guide us through those. And today we are seeing a broad vision of a path forward. And I want to thank you, Brad, thank you, Amy, thank you, Microsoft, but thank the other leaders who are here who share that vision. I couldn't be more proud to stand with my fellow mayors from the county. Thank you, Leader Chop. Thank you, John Stanton, United Way, our philanthropy partners who've been acknowledged. It is only together that we will make a difference here. Claudia Balducci, who's on the county council, has had an affordable housing task force, and her numbers are clear on what we need to do to make a path forward. We cannot have a region. It is not sustainable if the people who work in that region cannot live in that region. We in Seattle have done a tremendous amount, and I thank the voters of Seattle for taking the steps they've done to have the forward thinking to build our own levy fund to help with affordable housing. Just in the 2 years that I've been mayor, I've actually only been mayor 1 year, but in those 2 announcements, we have announced together with our partners over $700 million in affordable housing that we will be developing over the next years, leading to thousands of new units, and it's not enough. It is clear that we cannot go it alone in Seattle. It's why I was proud to join with Executive Constantine and Mayor Bacchus to form one table to bring everyone together to be addressing the issues of homelessness, the root causes of homelessness, and housing affordability. Today is a significant step because it shows our partner of the region, Microsoft, who is from here, not Phoenix, here, who grew here, knows that that vision of the future, just like the Ellis brothers years ago formed a vision of how we could be as a region. We see that kind of leadership today. Thank you, Brad, in particular, for all of you've done, not just today, but in every issue that touches the heart of our region. Thank you for all you've done. And we know it will not happen overnight, and it will not happen with just one city or one county going it alone. We have to look at this together, which is why I'm so excited by the data you've been able to harness so we can work on this together. We'll be announcing shortly in Seattle a middle-income housing task force to get at that issue in Seattle, because we know we want our teachers, our firefighters, the people who give us so much to be able to live in Seattle. Mayor Chelmiak, I know you think you're in line for half this money, but we know we got to share it a region. And it's really, for me, it's so telling that we have it here for me personally. I rode bikes in the neighborhoods around Crossroads, and it grew up as neighborhoods that was based on Boeing, and those houses were filled by Boeing workers and Boeing families. And then we had a huge economic downturn where literally when Boeing faced its problems, neighborhoods emptied out. And we rose then as a region together, and now we're facing almost the opposite problem. If we want to keep this vitality, if we want a region based on justice and equity, we need to address this challenge. We can only do it with huge steps like this. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for everyone who's done this. And now I'm really proud to introduce another leader who has stepped up in so many ways, Lauren Thomas, the CEO of HopeLink.
Thank you, Jenny. Great job. Good morning, everyone. It's so delightful to be here today. Thank you, Mayor Durkin. Thank you, Microsoft, for having us be a part of this very exciting announcement. As you all know, Microsoft is the premier leader in supporting nonprofits in our community, and on behalf of all nonprofits, we thank you. We at HopeLink are proud to serve our community. We do so through services that we provide and through our workforce of over 325 employees. Unfortunately, many of our own staff members also cannot afford to live within the communities that we serve. We know that in East King County, a family of 4 must earn a minimum of $87,000 just to achieve the basic needs of food, shelter, transportation, and child care. This tells us that working families at the middle income and levels cannot afford to live here, and the rising cost of housing is potentially sending them into a spiral of poverty. HopeLink's Community Needs Assessment, commissioned in 2017, validated that the highest social service needs in our community are affordable housing, transportation, access to an affordable wage, and food security. HopeLink helps people stabilize their lives, and then helps them equip them to exit poverty with the tools and skills they need for success. However, as our clients begin to achieve success and achieve their goals and maintain self-sufficiency, they are often forced to leave their community in order to meet their family's needs. As Officer Weiche said in the video earlier, this weakens the community because we all lose valuable employees. And it's hard also for those being pushed out. Families lose their support systems, children change schools and start over. For instance, Kathy, one of our clients, and her 2 sons turned to HopeLink a few years ago for housing and support at a critical moment in her life. With a lot of work, she was able to stabilize her living situation, working with her case manager to put her life back together. However, she ended up moving to Bellingham, where she could afford to live and work while she raised her 2 sons, who are now thriving in college. At HopeLink, we're building a community where all people have access to food and shelter, where they're able to maintain stability and acquire the tools and skills needed to exit poverty, and where home isn't just where we live, but it's where we engage with those around us and where we all thrive together. Nonprofits have seen the negative impacts of the increased costs of housing on the participants we serve, on our staff, on our volunteers, and our participants. King County and the City of Seattle have worked hard to build a coordinated effort to address the homelessness epidemic, and there is a lot of attention to this crisis. We are so proud that Microsoft and the partners here today are addressing the equally important, critical crisis of the lack of affordable housing for low and middle income households, such as our staff, our volunteers, and the participants who are working tirelessly to exit poverty. Many people may not know that HopeLink is also a longtime partner of King County Metro and a provider of transportation services. Through this critical work, increasing access to transportation, we have learned that the distance that people need to travel between their work, their community resources, and their jobs continues to grow exponentially, and the burden of this commute is significant. But there is another critical element in the need for affordable housing. A diverse portfolio of housing affordability within a community builds a diversity of residents, which in turn creates a healthy community. It also reduces the challenge of traffic that we struggle with every day. Partnering with invested corporate partners is the best option to finding solutions. It is going to take all of us working together. Nonprofits today are competing for dwindling government dollars, and an even greater challenge in this area is the competition for land. We just can't do the work we do without partnerships. As an example, HopeLink has been based in Redmond for more than 25 years. A few years ago, when we began looking for a site for our new headquarters, we learned firsthand about the competition for affordable land in this area. It was only through a public-private partnership with the City of Redmond that we were able to keep our headquarters in Redmond and ensure that our services are close and accessible to our low-income neighbors. And we know that government can't do it alone either. More and more, we look to businesses to partner with us to support our community. Microsoft is a leader in reaching out to nonprofits to collaborate, and we are so appreciative of this partnership. We are currently working on a major project with our Tech for Social Impact team. They are helping us find new and better ways to create a robust technology system and apply learnings from their corporate success to help us create and collaborate across our agency. I believe the concept of community works best as a call to action, an opportunity to unite our goals with our strengths in a way that truly makes a difference for everyone. This initiative is a significant investment in the families we serve, the volunteers that make our work possible, and the colleagues that work tirelessly for our clients. It's a message for our families that they do belong here and that we're all working together to make their housing affordable. Thank you. Thank you, Dad. Thanks, Amy.
Just want to thank everybody so much for being here on such an important day, I think, for our region and our local community.
For us, we just wanted to offer two thoughts in closing. This is obviously our home. It has been for 40 years. And we believe that what we're doing today is good for business. It's good for every business. It's good for every business in the region because you can't build a successful business unless you're part of a healthy community. And that's what this step enables us to do. But there's one other thing as well, and it's the thing that we perhaps think about most after we've analyzed all the numbers and talked with all the experts. And I say this not only on behalf of the two of us and Satya, but by all of us who are part of Microsoft's senior leadership team. Every day for 40 years, we at Microsoft have benefited from the support of this community. We see it in the people we meet, we see it in the people who step forward, we see it in people who are our shareholders locally, we see it in people who are our customers, but most importantly, we see it in our neighbors. Our success has been fueled by the support of this region. we want our success to support the region in return. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for attending our announcement.